So I've been Chief Councillor at the Climate Council since its inception in 2013, and we've developed a number of really interesting programs. Some of the ones that really stand out in my mind are the Cities Power Partnership, where we're working with local councils to try to implement clean technology initiatives. We have also had the Emergency Services Chiefs program, so getting people together to hearing what they have to say and what they see as the future requirements for everything from bushfires to heat waves. And we've also been involved with local farmers who are, again, really in the forefront of the climate emergency in some ways. I think it's inevitable that we're going to need to use really advanced technological approaches to deal with climate change. I guess at the moment, the things I'm excited about are the transition to clean energy sources, but I'm also very aware that we are now working in a phase where if we want to stabilise our climate, we're going to need to draw some of the CO2 out of the air. And that is a very, very challenging thing to do. I've worked for years on trying to understand how it might be done. And to me, some of the best prospects at the moment concern seaweed in the oceans and the use of a thing called silicate rocks. And Australia has great opportunities in both of those areas. For me, as a precautionary approach, I guess, as a scientist, what I would say is that if we're going to grow our population, we need to be sure we have the resources there that allow us to do that sustainably. And back in 1994, we had a lot less technology than we have today. So, for example, one of the things I was quite concerned about in 1994 was water availability. And that's still an issue for our big agricultural lands. But in the cities, since 1994, we've been able to use desalinisation, often powered by clean energy sources, to provide some water at least to our cities. I still think water is a critical issue, and I'd like to see governments, as they frame immigration policies and so forth, to make sure that we've got a cost-effective source of water. One of the other areas that really concerns me is food production. I must say, looking at the impacts of the drought last year, with Australia importing wheat for the first time in many years, really brought home to me the fragility of our production here in the face of increased climate change. So again, I think we just need to reassure ourselves as a society that we have the resources to continue, if we want to continue growing our population, to do it in a sustainable and wise manner. I'm yet to see that demonstrated. I guess in 1994, when I wrote The Future Eaters, I was dealing with population in a very biological manner, just saying there should be a carrying capacity and we need to deal with it in that way. A few things have happened since then. One is that the world is so much more globalised now than it was then. So that the interconnections are now much, much greater between Australia and the rest of the world. And of course, our technology has changed. So I'm not sure that we can have a hard-edged kind of boundary around what our population should be. But what I can see is that we need to look at population growth through that context of making sure that we have the means to sustain that population into the future. Yeah, and that is a missing element in the way we frame our population policy. Well, look, dealing with population, you inevitably get comments on both sides. I remember one senator, Australian senator, turned to me once and said, "I know what your problem is. You just don't like people." It couldn't be further from the truth. Of course I like people, but I want to make sure that people have the opportunity for a proper, dignified life. Other people have suggested maybe I'm racist and I don't like people coming in from overseas. But how do you counter that? All you can say is that you're not. Everyone's equal in my eyes. But again, we just have to look after, given that we live in a world of national governments, we've got a responsibility to those who comprise our nation. So we have to be cautious in that way. There's a need for someone to speak out about this issue and to try to be a bit objective about it, try to influence policy so that we get outcomes that are in the interests of the nation. And I think that's the key thing. We don't want to be in a position where one sector of society is driving things. The real estate sector, housing and construction sector play a disproportionate role in influencing government policy because it's in their interest that population continues to grow. We need to take a broader view than that. Look, for those who are interested in advocating for some sort of population policy or some discussion around that, the best way to start is simply to ask questions. I find it interesting to begin the discussion by saying, what's driving our current population policy or de facto population policy? And to try to unpick that a little bit. And to say, well, who are the winners? Who are the losers? I remember I spoke to a real estate group last year about population, and they were talking about how difficult it is to get people in Western Sydney to accept future development. And I just asked the question, well, is it any easier where you live in Double Bay or Mossman to get that sort of thing? And it was just like holding up the mirror for a moment to say everyone has their issues around their backyard, and that all has to be recognised as part of the mix. So I think it's important to just keep that individual human perspective on this whole issue. I was invited to be patron of SPA when I was in South Australia, which would have been the early 2000s, I think. I'm proud to be patron of the organisation, though. And I think that the role is really one of just offering a bit of a guiding light to what is a complex and difficult issue. SPA is really important because it's dealing with a very significant long-term issue for our nation about how big we should get. How big should our cities be? How big should our population be? Do we have the resources to support populations of a given size? These are questions that they're not just political questions or economic questions, they're societal questions. And SPA plays a great role in terms of just helping a dialogue, assisting for a dialogue to occur through society that really focuses our mind for a while on those questions. So I think it's a really important organisation, an important one for people to support. And it does a role that neither government nor industry or any other group is doing.